Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, we had our 50,000 subscriber live stream giveaway yesterday, and I hope a lot of you were able to see that. And we had several people win, and that stuff is being sent out, in the next day or so. So be looking forward and seeing that in your mail soon. For those of you that want it, it didn't turn out as good as I hoped for. I want to apologize for the quality of the live stream. The data quality there was actually fine when I got there. I did a test because I was running off of the Wi-Fi in the place, and they told me ahead of time they had good strong Wi-Fi. And I checked it, and it was plenty. There was plenty of bandwidth for me to do a live stream. Well, something happened that I didn't really figure on happening. Several people, a lot of people showed up, and probably not everyone there to watch because of I was doing that, but there's also normal customers coming in. And as I was doing it, word kind of spread around, because you can imagine it wasn't a huge place, and everyone started logging in on the Wi-Fi to watch it, and I wasn't really factoring that in. And it really hampered the video stream quality for the live stream. So I apologize for that, and I'm trying to figure out some ways that I can work around that. But it was a good day. I got to meet some people that showed up. One guy, he was a truck driver, and not from this area at all, but he was passing through, and he had heard, I guess on a previous video, that I was going to be doing this, and so he drove a little out of his way just to come and see and meet, and it was a good. We had a good conversation. He was a really good guy. So thank you for all that showed up. Today I want to talk about something that I know some of you are gonna say, this is fear-mongering again, or you're trying to terrify people. I promise you I'm not. That is never my goal. I'm not trying to make something bigger than it is just for the sake of getting views. That I don't care about that. And if that was my goal, I assure you I could do things very differently to try to get more people to watch this channel. I don't use a lot of the tactics that some other channels do, so I'm telling you this kind of stuff out of the sincere care that I have of hoping that people get ready. So we've been talking about obvious things: the supply chain problems, the labor shortages causing problems in the supply chain, with the truck drivers and the port workers, and now we've got people being fired and laid off because of this. There was like 100 police officers, state troopers in Washington State. There's been numerous firefighters that's been laid off, obviously hospital workers, and various other industries all over. But we've got this thing coming up soon called winter. And we've been talking about that too. We've been talking about the prices of fuel. Heating costs are skyrocketing, and even natural gas in some areas is expected to go up 180%. 180%. They're expecting an overall average to be somewhere around 55 to 60% increase in heating costs. And that's even if you can get them, because there's also shortages there because of a lot of the restrictions that's been put on to these different industries because of all these Paris Climate Accord and all that kind of garbage coming out of global entities trying to limit the production of these fossil fuels. And so there's all that kind of stuff going on, and we've talked about that in length. But we've got winter coming on, folks, and so not only are all these problems going to be just exacerbated, even worse, because it's winter, because people they tend to buy more. They tend to buy more food. There's holidays that a lot of people celebrate. People come home from college, or they're just home for the holidays or whatever. And then it's cold. And so you're going to need to be running more fuel. You need to be heating your home. And there are some places that it gets definitely cold enough that you can die. Even here in the Ozarks, almost every year I hear in the news of someone, it's usually an elderly person, but not always, that they end up finding dead in their home because they froze to death. They just died of exposure because it got too cold and they didn't keep their house warm enough. And that happens in much more often in northern regions. And so we've got cold coming in. and we've got less supplies, less food, less heating fuels, and much, much more expensive heating fuels. So there's a big problem. But guess what? Let's just add more to it, right? Let's just add more to it. We've got the labor shortages, and here's an article someone sent me from Ohio. That Ohio, and I'm sure that this is, I have no doubt that this is not the only place that this is happening. It just happens it's the only place that has an article that I can show you. But in Ohio, they're worried about road crews this winter, the snow removal, ice removal crews, because of labor shortages. They're looking to hire 500 new drivers because they don't have enough people to keep the roads clear. And while in some states that may not be, enforcing mandates or anything like that, it may not be a problem, but there are many states that are doing that. And so how many of those states are going to have problems now because, they don't have enough drivers to keep the roads clear? What other types of things, maybe employees to keep the grid running, keeping the fuel flowing through pipelines and things like that, getting fuel delivered to your house if you have propane. Maybe some of those places might deal with some labor shortages. These are problems that are becoming a reality, and that they're going to just exacerbate all the system, the whole problem, because winter's coming on. And here's something else, and this is something I haven't talked about in quite a while, and so I want to get back on this bandwagon today. And that is what's going on this planet in nature. And I'm not going to get into the argument of whether this is all just natural or whether it's caused by man. I know there's a lot of different theories, but grand solar minimum, solar cycle, sun cycle 25, and the fact that we are having a lot of volcanic eruptions. The weather patterns are changing. I'm going to walk through on tiptoes on this one because YouTube has new restrictions on what you can talk about in this subject. So bear with me on that. To date, and I cannot get a precise, accurate number, as of October the 15th, let's just put it that way. As of October the 15th, which was just a few days ago, there were 70 recorded volcanic eruptions on the Earth. Out of those 70, 22 were brand new eruptions, and 48 are still continually erupting. Since October 15th, again, I can't find a real, accurate number on this. It appears that there have been somewhere between 5 and 6, maybe 7 additional eruptions just since October 15th. There's been several just in the news in the last day or two. That's not extreme, but it is on the high end of average. Again, depending on the source that you check, we have between 40 and 70 volcanic eruptions a year, or 50 and 80 volcanic eruptions a year. It just depends on what source you look at. Either way, we are certainly on the high end of those numbers. And the year's not over yet. There's several that are still that they're worried could go, and so we could certainly have some more before the end of the year, and it could make probably not a record year, but it could certainly make a year high amount of volcanic activity this year. So what does that have to do with what I'm talking about? Well, when volcanoes erupt, they spew lots of ash into the atmosphere typically, and that ash and the gases that are spewed into the atmosphere causes a cooling process. And while one volcano or just a few may only affect, or maybe not even affect very much, when you start having a lot more than normal, it's very possible and within the realm of possibility that we could see it affect global temperatures throughout the winter. We're not talking drastic, but it doesn't have to be drastic if you understand these things. Even if it causes only a 0.5 degree drop on average global temperatures, that can be pretty significant in areas, especially areas where you're paying a lot more to have fuel. There's a little bit of shortages or tightening of supply chains, and so it's making it a little harder. You're not, maybe you're not able to keep the house as warm as you normally would because it costs too much, or it's just not as readily available. And then add to that, potential, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not making any claims, but a potential for a much cooler winter. And we believe that we're going to have a cooler winter because of grand solar minimum and the other things surrounding that. Already we're seeing signs of this, okay? Even here, while it's not been ridiculous, this past week we came pretty close to hitting the freezing mark at night, and that's kind of unusual, not completely unheard of, but still, fairly cool. There's been a lot of people talking about this in chat rooms, messages to me, comments on YouTube, that in the areas that they are at, that they're already dealing with some pretty cold temperatures. They're already dealing with snow. Colorado's been dealing with record or near record snowfalls in certain parts of Colorado. We're looking at potential record temperatures in places in Australia, in China, seeing record cold temperatures for the month of October, including in places in Colorado, here in North America. So we're already seeing a trend move to the cold. So much so that just a week or two ago, I believe it was, maybe 3 weeks, within the last few weeks, we'll put it that way, the coldest temperature ever recorded in human history was recorded down at the South Pole. And they're seeing, the ice build up there, and we're seeing temperatures get extremely cold in some areas. Now, don't get me wrong, just hold up just a minute, because anytime I talk about this stuff, I get a lot of people saying, oh, come on, you talking about some kind of ice age, that the whole planet's going to be covered in ice. No, I'm not talking like that. I guess there's always possibilities of that. That's not what I believe is going to happen. I do believe that we're entering a pattern because our Earth goes through cyclical weather patterns. It's the way it was created. I believe that wholeheartedly. We can see throughout history. Only in recent decades has the narrative changed to push a political agenda, and that's about all I'm going to say on that. The point is, we've got a fairly high number of volcanic eruptions, not extreme, don't get me wrong, not extreme, but a fairly high number of volcanic eruptions. We have a solar cycle pattern that's indicating that we could see a cooler winter in some areas, not all areas. If you really understand, and I don't fully understand, but I understand the science enough, that it doesn't mean that the entire planet is going through this deep freeze, deep cold. It just means in certain areas, it's because of the effects, it is going to change weather patterns, and the Northern Hemisphere is one of those. I saw something that a Russian scientist, I can't remember what background field, is predicting a very cold winter for the Northern Hemisphere. So if all this stuff does happen, or even just some of it happens, and you add to that the fact that we have a shortage and price increases and not enough employees and on and on and on, again, I think, maybe you can see how I'm thinking, that we're looking at another perfect storm setup. Maybe not apocalyptic. It's possible. It's always possible. I do believe that our society, our civilization, is very fragile. I believe it's like a house of cards, and if it's attacked and something collapses in the wrong place, it could lead to a series of events that could lead us into an apocalyptic. When I say that, I'm not talking biblical apocalyptic. I'm just talking, massively devastating. But I'm not necessarily predicting that. I'm just saying I understand those are possibilities. What I am saying is that everything is lining up in a way that I think we're going to see some pretty tough times. And I think while not everyone is going to be affected, because, a lot of people, while they may not be rich, they have enough money to kind of stay afloat. The bottom numbers of people, the elderly, the single mothers, the people that are just struggling, husband and wives with their kids struggling. Some of you homesteaders, it may not be a financial problem necessarily as much as the fact that you're trying to build a homestead, you're trying to get things set up, and you're just not quite ready yet for a really harsh winter. You have to factor in a lot of these things, folks. So while I'm not, saying that there's going to be some widespread, problem, we could certainly see problems in a lot of areas. And all of these things that are going on, they're all part of it. And you know, we deal with an administration and media and these elites and leaders that they don't want to acknowledge that. They just want to be very narrowly focused and say, oh, well, this problem isn't that bad because of this. And no one's saying that everything's horrible because of one problem. We're saying things are falling apart because there's lots of little problems and a lot of big problems happening all at the same time. So these volcanic eruptions, will they play a factor into this? I don't know. I don't have the science to back it up, and I don't have the knowledge, the background to back it up. But I have a feeling that it could. I think it could, from what I understand of how things work. I think it certainly could be a factor into this. So in the end, what do? Well, you get prepared. You get prepared as much as you can. You start, you know, one of the things that you could do is start shifting your focus to just that. Not saying that you stop, you know, preparing in other ways, but you make a pretty strong focus on making sure you have fuel, alternative fuel, backup fuels, you have backup heat sources, making sure that you have enough food. You know, I always try to push this idea that to have at least a year or two's food supply. But if you're just starting out, that may not be feasible. Can you come up with a 2 or 3 month food supply? Can you get yourself through to March maybe? If you can do something like that, or at least, you know, 2 or 3 months food supply to supplement what you can actually get. You know, it's not perfect. You know, should you be able to have, would it be great to have, you know, much more of a food supply? Absolutely it would be. But do the best that you can, because time is ticking away. It's getting cooler, it's getting colder. And these problems that we're having with, you know, supply chains and labor shortages and, you know, not able to get trucks moving in California because of the ridiculous laws that they've imposed on truckers and all of these things happening. You know, I think our problems are, at least these problems are very immediate, and that we're facing them right now, and they're going to get worse real soon. So you've got to take the steps that you can to get prepared for it. And it's different for everybody. But folks, again, maybe I'm missing something here, maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of have a feeling that all the stuff that's going on, I think it's all connected anyways. I think a lot of the stuff that's happening, you know, the other day I talked about how much the elites, the wealth transfer between, you know, us regular people and the elites, the amount of wealth transfer in the last year and a half. I have a suspicious gut feeling that a lot of the stuff that we're seeing happen is, it's very possible that these elites and stuff have a pretty good idea that society is collapsing. They're just trying to milk it for what it's worth, so that when it does, they're left holding all the gold. I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm telling you, someone could make a pretty doggone good argument that that's what's going on. So do your best to get yourselves prepared, get your home, family, extra blankets, make sure you got plenty of socks and coats and stuff and sweaters and things. I mean, if you have to cut back on heat, you know, bundle up and layer up inside the home. At least it keeps you going, folks. All right. Just get yourselves prepared. Prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you all for watching. Catch you in the next video.